What's going on, creators? Yeah, I just want to get on here and bring everybody back to now. Appreciate y'all being here and vibing with me for a bit. Yeah, today I like to talk a little bit about balancing forces and how you can use this principle along the bridges of incidents so you don't become triggered and reactive when you're like vibing super high. You got a lot of energy. Things are really just in awesome flow states and whatnot, and then you're confronted, with some drama, confronted with some draining situation, potentially draining situation. All of these kinds of things that can kind of take you down a peg and like bring you from like up here to down here. A lot of those are a result of metaphysical principles, and you can start to use those principles to actually level up so you experience less and less of these balancing forces once you become aware of how they're kind of governing and limiting your perception. And what I mean by that, money is an excellent example where it's just like people can be in scarcity in two different ways. One way is like I actually have nothing, no money, no abundance whatsoever. It's like it's just me, myself, and God. Nothing's demonstrated at the moment. There's that. Well, there's also something that a lot of people maybe have never experienced where you actually do have a lot of money coming in. Well, then the next thing you know, you have all these fears of scarcity, of losing it. So you have not enough and then fear of loss. Both things can happen on that pendulum. And pendulums are a concept from, what did he say, Vadim Zeland, and like reality transurfing. I was introduced to that book. It was an audio book on YouTube. Don't know if it still is, but I was listening to that while I was working, gave it a chance, but the language is super specific and technical, and to me it doesn't resonate just because of the complexity and technicality of the language. Mainly because like I look at metaphysics and just spiritual things as being able to be boiled down for like a child to understand. So it's like if it's ultra specific, that can be awesome because then it's ultra clear if you are really familiar with that kind of technical language. And to me, I got kind of turned off by that. But he had a concept in there that was pretty fascinating when it came to pendulums. And that kind of thing, when it comes to scarcity, is an excellent example of that. Pendulums also exist in like any type of like, this is a type of pendulum, on a potential pendulum. The media can be a type of pendulum where you have a bunch of people combining their consciousness, and like the pendulum's goal is always to grow and strengthen the pendulum, which can swing both ways. And so like money is like an excellent example of that balancing force of like, well, if I don't have enough, but then you can look into creation, and then there's people that are demonstrating large amounts of abundance that don't have that balancing force. And so a lot of times the balancing forces are a direct result of our own consciousness, and more importantly, our own limiting beliefs and assumptions. And so when you're faced with the balancing force, it's ultra important to then check your mindset in that same moment that the force comes in to like either take away what you just managed to achieve. Like we'll keep it on money because it's transferable. We all got to deal with it, and we've all experienced that kind of balancing force where it's just like, oh, I got a bonus, I got a $500 bonus from work, how fucking awesome, yay. Next thing you know, the water heater breaks, and it's like, oh, well, at least I had the $500 to go do that, and it's like, oh, okay. And that's an excellent example of like a balancing force coming into play that keeps you at a certain state of consciousness, a certain level. If you look at everything in creation, not from left to right, past, present, future, the way a lot of like the world will look at like time and linear time and stuff, but if you look at creation more cyclically and functioning up and down, it's a little bit easier to start to level up in the sense that when those balancing forces come in, you can kind of visualize that as like, well, I teetered up to here. I passed the threshold of what my consciousness can handle, what can demonstrate it without this limiting belief coming right in my face and like, wiping the wiping the surplus clean, get you right back to the same level of consciousness. Weight loss is another example of that. I had been on this weight loss journey for like a year or two, lost around 35 pounds, I guess. But in that, my goal was to get to 165, and it was like 3 weeks that I was at 160, like 167. depending on how much water and shit I was drinking. It's like it was fluctuating, but I was like really close to hitting that goal. And my thought process was like, all right, I'm going to lose this 1 pound. This is not going to be that big of a deal. I'm just going to just calorie deficit. I'm just going to fucking starve myself until I just not only just hit that, but then get a little bit below it. Then I like reach this pedestal. I can move on to the next milestone or whatever. 3 weeks of like only eating like maybe 1,200 calories. Like no breakfast. I never eat breakfast. But like no breakfast, no lunch. Maybe 1,000 calorie, 1,200, it was in that zone. It's like my typical range, is like a small lunch, like maybe, 500 calories, only drinking water. And then, I was trying to hit like 1,500 to 1,600 calories a day during my normal, fasting weight loss type thing. And with this crash diet, it's just like, just maybe 1,000. I don't know. It's just like I'm only going to eat dinner, and I'm not going to go crazy on like dinner either. Until like that weight comes off, I'm going to really be pushing like physical, burning a lot of calories then too. Well, go on this thing. Keep going to the Y. Then that's where I weigh myself, is at the Y in the locker room. Keep the same scale, same everything, wear the same swimsuit, so it's like pretty spot on as far as that goes. And didn't hit it, and it was just this big pedestal, and you'd feel this balancing force come in. And the thing about like weight loss and just like consciously, developing your body, the temple, it's no different than any metaphysical thing. It's about an identity, and it starts in mind. And so it's like if your identity is like, oh, I'm the fat guy, or I'm the unattractive person, or I'm so this, I'm so that. Women find me so repulsive. Whatever you're telling yourself, which is not actually even yourself, because the subconscious is hearing and observing every thought and belief and assumption that you have, and then externalizing that onto the screen of space and into the events of your life. It's the same process every time. Doesn't matter what it is, because it's all one thing. And weight loss is like part of that, where it's like you take the shit off the pedestal, because the pedestal is part of that balancing force, because you put it way up here. Then in the present moment, it's like you're wanting, which is like, oh, I want to lose this pound, I want to lose this final bit of whatever, which is saying to the subconscious, I am not this, I am not that, I crave this, I desire that. And the subconscious is non-selective. It's like dirt and soil. Not to say like to belittle the the field of awareness, but it's non-selective. It doesn't care what you're planting, whether that's blessings or curses. And so a lot of times, these balancing forces will come in when you're starting to really focus and grow faster than what you're capable of doing in consciousness, because you maybe have a limiting belief that you're not worthy of it, that you're unattractive. With weight loss, it's like, oh, no, I can't, I don't think of myself as being attractive or sexy, or, like, well, women desire desire me, and they think about me naked all the time, all this kind of shit. Well, it's like, if you just lose the weight, but you don't have the correspondence of mind, you're not going to really achieve what you're wanting to do, because you have it on this pedestal that like, oh, if I just achieve this, then I'll be so happy. Oh, and it's like, oh, if I just hit this milestone when it comes to money, then I'll be so happy. Oh, if I just have this career success, then I'll be so happy. All these things manifesting backwards, where it's like the actual demonstration is better looked at as almost like a neutral, because by the time you actually can demonstrate it without the balancing forces coming in to take away, what you're trying to do, or just put up a bunch of roadblocks, the roadblocks are in mind, and that's what the balancing forces are acting on. And as you start to realize there's a correlation that I gotta embody in mind, I need to make this normal and natural to be abundant, for example, or to be healthy, or to be in a harmonious relationship, or to have an awesome family life, or whatever it is. Wherever there's this glaring weed in the garden of your life, that's like, okay, well, I obviously have to address this, because it's like, if I do address this, then the good that I'm manifesting will have more ability to get big and flourish and evolve and grow. So you can become triggered when like a balancing force comes in of like, oh, I got $1,000 surprisingly, and then my car breaks down and I got to pay $1,000. Why, it's easy to go, well, at least I had the resources to take care of it, so the universe was taking care of me. And yeah, that's maybe one way to look at it. But again, there's people in creation that you can look at as a giant like mirror for what's possible, that are demonstrating like, oh, well, that person doesn't have that problem. It's like, they have like 4 cars, and it's like, it doesn't ever seem like they're ever doing that. And then you talk to them, it's like, and problems with cars aren't even in their consciousness. It's not easy. It's like, it's not a big deal. It's not a fear that's then manifesting. Again, you look at everything that's going on in the bridges of incidence, which is, again, a law of assumption term for maybe people that are just fresh into Neville Goddard or just a law of assumption, or maybe have drifted in from the law of attraction, where the law of assumption is you embody the end now. You're thinking from, not thinking of. And so it's like abundance is a good example. You're making that the normal and natural state, because that is normal and natural, because God is the source for your abundance, and it's as within, so without. So it's like you are already demonstrating what you're able to handle in consciousness without the balancing forces coming in, without the resistance, without the limiting beliefs being externalized, all of these types of things. And so what you do is you take what you have and you grow it. You're not projecting into like an imaginary future, which is like, I believe, a stumbling block of the law of attraction. It's like, oh, I'm constantly going to ruminate in thought, and it can drift over to the law of assumption too, where it's just like making this eureka magical you made it future in your consciousness. Not saying it's not important to have like a vision or like a goal or whatever. It's the mental masturbating of like, oh, I'm rejecting what is in the present moment for some future where I have all of this stuff, and then I can handle it because music is a good example of that, where it's like a lot of times that you talk to like musicians that are just getting going or whatever, and there's like this illusion that, well, once I get like a crowd of like 2,000 or 3,000 people, then I'll put on a fucking show, then I'll be a rock star, then I'll be awesome. But it's like, by the time, if you don't develop into that, if you don't grow into that and expand your consciousness through the bridges of incidence of getting there, by the time you actually get there, a lot of times it's not even a big deal, because your consciousness is already expanded to that point. Having a business is like that, where it's just like a lot of people put that on a pedestal of like, well, if I just had my own business and I didn't have a boss, then I'd be so happy, Mike. And it's like, okay, well, there's a lot to unpack when it comes to having a business. By the time you actually have one that's going, it just feels normal and natural. It's not this pedestal. It's not this, oh, if I just achieve this external thing, then I can be so happy. It's I trust that God, for example, is the source of these jobs, these customers. I don't have to really do anything other than when it's confronting me in the present moment. Oh, I got a house to paint. Then I'm going to paint that to the best of my ability. As you steward, as you grow what you have, your consciousness naturally, through the process of doing, gets evolved to the point where then you can demonstrate these different things, these different milestones or attributions or whatever, these demonstrations of your faith. Is ultimately, we all are demonstrating our faith. Some people are demonstrating their faith in fear, others faith in love. It's two ways of looking at it. Every time is two ways of looking at it. And unfortunately for the people that are in the cursed mind, they're demonstrating what they don't want. They're demonstrating fear unconsciously, which then and they're doing it just by the uncontrolled mental chatter, the fear, the hysteria, the shit going on the inside, that they're just letting these mind things just, oh, penetrate into awareness, and as it's married then with their emotions, a lot of time, fear, and you believe it, you feel it, it's constricting. If you believe that's a real and having an expectancy on top of that, it's not a balancing force. It's you planted that shit into the soil of awareness, and now in time, which is an illusion, but there's a bridge. If you take time and a bridge and the bridges of incidents and kind of marry those two concepts in your mind, kind of make those one, then it's easier not to be stuck in, well, it's only ever now, and there's an unfoldment that happens that develops your consciousness along the way. So with a business, it's like, you have your first customer, you have your first, job, you have your first, all these milestones. And it's like, as you are able to tackle those things without becoming unconscious, becoming fearful and hysterical, the customer's going to sue me, or they're going to be, whatever drama. Well, as you can do that without the resistance or these balancing forces that come in the physical reality that create the obstacle, that create the drama, that create the situation. If you can look that in the present moment, look that problem or whatever square in the face, and go, okay, well, this is what it is. How do we fix this? How can we move on? How can we take care of this? For example, like doing construction work, and I have a handyman business, and so it's like I'm confronted with all these weird problems all the time. Where in the past, you could be fearful and reactive, expecting problems, expecting the worst case scenarios, and then being confronted with it. Well, if you just look at it as, well, anytime something happens, I'm going to have one of two options. I'm going to be able to, look at it. I'm going to be able to, one thing at a time. Everything is just one hand goes here, one hand goes, is never that fearful. It feels like it, but a lot of that has to do with old programming and old conditioning. And so you just tackle it. One, boom. Now, next logical step. It's like cleaning a room. It's like, oh, I'm so overwhelmed by all the shit everywhere. It's like, well, disregard everything. What's right in front of me? Well, first thing I can do is I can take this little piece of something, I just throw it away. Okay, what's next? I can throw this away. What's next? Well, I can just clean off this whole desk. What's next? And then you just keep going whenever you're confronted, tackling it. And you learn that through doing what you already have and growing it by, not having a bunch of resistance, not letting these balancing forces come in. And not to say it's not important to stretch and go beyond, because you hit one mountaintop, you see two more. You hit the next one, you see two more. It's a progression. And as long as you start to realize that there is no end, there is no end magic moment, it's all this progression. Guitar is an excellent example. It's like, yeah, it starts off, it's kind of bullshit when you first start playing guitar, because it's frustrating, it's difficult, it's hard to get your fingers to actually position correctly on the guitar neck, and then be able to strum, and be able to press down the strings enough that it sounds good. It hurts your fingers until you get calluses on it, so it's like the guitar is a kind of a bitch to get started, but as you start playing over the next couple years, you have this, it's more satisfying. There's not the drama, there's not the bullshit, there's not this, there's not these fears, there's not these concerns. Now it's being really satisfying. And then then it gets to a point where it's just like you become like almost just like merged with it, where it's just like I fucking just play, and I almost forget that I'm playing. I don't have a bunch of mental activity, I'm in a bunch of flow when doing it. And you're able to demonstrate it without like a balancing force coming in. Like, say you never played in front of people, and then you jump in front of, like, you get invited to play in front of like an arena or something, and you're just shaking with fear because you're just not mentally at the level that you can demonstrate that. And so then like a balancing force comes in, takes you down a peg, maybe you fuck it up awful, you get humbled, and then you start over, and then in the past where it's like, well, I could look at that balancing force as like an adversary, this, that, that's coming to take me down a peg or whatever, to and a lot of it has to do with just your own mental activity of putting shit on pedestals. That's a big connecting dot between a balancing force and a pedestal thing, where you're making a really big deal about it. It's like by the time that you can actually demonstrate it, a lot of times it's not even a fucking problem. It's not even an ordeal. It doesn't make you feel any particular way, really. It's just like, it's just normal and natural. It's normal and natural that I have a shirt in a closet. It's normal and natural that, that food comes to me easily. It's normal and natural that, I have electricity. It's normal and natural that, there's all these types of things that are normal and natural. A lot of that's subjective. If someone were just to be thrown into the life that I live with their consciousness, they'd probably freak the fuck out, having a family and, no, I don't know where my, it's like I don't have a Fortune 500 job. It's like I'm just out here. I'm just out in this fucking creation, just doing shit. Thankfully God's the source of income. But it's all. Some people couldn't handle that shit because they need that security. God, Mike, I need to have like a 401k. I need it, because and it's like everybody's different. Everybody's built different or whatever. But to grow, to expand your consciousness, it takes what you have in maximizing that to what's causing you right now to drift into unconscious states? What's causing you now? What's a balancing force that makes you feel like you're stuck at a certain level? Income level, fitness level, relationship. There's all one thing, and it's all stemming from mind. And the solution is in mind, and then being able to demonstrate that. So look at all these different areas that you've like put things on a pedestal, where it's just like, oh, I'd be so happy, Mike, if this happened. I'm daydreaming about it all the time. I'm fantasizing about it. I'm impressing the subconscious with it. It's like if I'm craving it, I'm needing it, I'm wanting it, I'm this, I'm that. It's like, yeah, well, what you're doing is unconsciously going, I am not this. I crave this because I lack this. I lack. And because you're doing that, not realizing it, you're getting that back to you. Lack. And so, like, part of like living in the end is like, what are you impressing the subconscious? Hey, things are working out great. Thank God I'm healthy today. Thank God that, all my needs are met. Everything's, going according to plan. That if there's a balancing force that comes in, it's not to punish me or torture me or take, keep things away from me. It's just showing me a limiting belief, a limiting assumption that I can start to let go of in mind. So that balancing force, say you get $1,000, and where in the past a balancing force would come in, and the water heater broke, dishwasher broke, vehicle broke, you got $1,000, that repair cost you $973.86. Thank you. And it's gone. It was taken from you. Well, you can look at that through this new lens and go, okay, obviously I have some beliefs about prosperity that are very limiting, because if I didn't have it, that balancing force wouldn't have come in. So what are my beliefs about excess energy, excess money, excess abundance, excess health? Is that a bad thing? Oh, I got too much health. Well, probably not. Oh, I got too much love. I'm a bad man. I got too much love. There's the bad man. It's like, well, those things you have no resistance about. So you start looking at the things that you have no resistance about, that don't have these balancing forces coming in, that are just taking it from you, and go, okay, well, I don't feel like that at all when it comes to health. It's like, I don't feel like you can be too in shape or too, well, you can't. Let me take that back, because I've seen some like bodybuilding people that's like, okay, that's getting on the other side of the fence, where it's getting a little excessive and extreme, but there's a sweet spot between those two examples, like morbidly obese, incredibly like zero, like single digit body fat, whatever. I'm in the gym all the time and it's who I am and whatever. I'm not saying anything's necessarily even bad with that, but it's like for me personally, when I see, okay, my palette is this and that, I want to be somewhere in this zone. You can use it as like to kind of clarify what you want, but you have these own obstacles and roadblocks in your own mind where it's just like, okay, well, I don't feel like that when it comes to like health. I can't breathe good enough and then feel guilty about it. It's like that's just normal and natural that I'm breathing great, and I have great cardio or whatever it happens to be. It's like you take those areas where there isn't the resistance, and then okay, but why do I feel like, okay, I have abundance of health or abundance in my relationships, an area where you're kicking ass. And it's like, use that as like, okay, now over here when it comes to money, I'm a shit show. Over here when it comes to health, I'm like excelling. Where are the beliefs differing? And maybe there's a belief that, well, evil people that fuck people over have money, and I'm a good boy, and so that's not who I am, and so I put, that belief is pushing money away from me. And actually, what I believe, Jesus was talking about when it comes to the lusting for money is the root of all evil, is that separation, that wanting, that desiring. That's not whole and complete. That's not realizing that God's the source for abundance. Because on the other end of that, our Creator is abundant according to the Bible. It's like, what is it? The cows on 1,000 hills or whatever are the creators. And like during the Bible days, wealth and farm animals or whatever were like a demonstration of wealth. It was like before they had just fiat currency that they printed out from nothing. There's like, oh, well, that's a tangible asset. And so part of like who you are in Christ is becoming one with a lot of the attributes of love. And if abundance is an attribute of our Creator, which the Bible clearly says is the case, then what was Jesus talking about with the lust of money? Well, I think lust with anything is like you're putting it on this pedestal, you're separating yourself from it in consciousness, you're not embodying it, then you're craving it, you're wanting, you're needing it, you're trying to force shit, you'll take it to get it. All of these types of separation beliefs in regards to something that God's already given you is what I believe is that lust, that craving, that desiring, that I'm not this, I'm not that scarcity belief. I'm not this, I'm not that. I need to do something to become whole and complete with this idea. That craving, that mental activity. Because so much of Jesus's teachings, in my opinion, were about the inner world, the thought world. Some of those examples, it was just like adultery, for example. It's like most people of the world would, that's when you cheat on your spouse and you fuck around with somebody else. But Jesus like made it even more of a distinction where it's like if you're doing it in consciousness, in your mind, you might as well just be doing it in the physical, because it's the same. It's that important type thing. Where a lot of the world will just doesn't even care about the thought world. The mind will just race, and it's normal and natural. It's normal and natural that 2/3 of the population's on SSRI, antidepressant, anxiety meds. It's just like, what? But like, mental illness is normal in our culture at the moment. Not to say it's always going to be that way. Hopefully by doing being part of this kind of cultural change when it comes to spiritual, metaphysical, bringing heaven to the present moment and demonstrating that for others to experience too, there's going to be a lot of healing when it comes to that kind of shit. But, we got to look at what is, not resist what is in the present moment, but to see the weeds, see the good fruit, start plucking out the shit that's not serving, and start to really cultivate the garden of culture, of humanity, of all this stuff, instead of just like, oh, look at the bad man. They're not saving me in the right way. Oh, look at the bad man over here. They're not making a utopia for me. It's like, well, so what are you doing? It's like, well, I'm waiting to be saved by them. Duh. It's like that kind of like victim mentality. Like, I can't do anything. I need the masters out here, the masters of the universe, to save me and create a utopia for me. So I can continue to consume and just do whatever. again. But I think I'm a balance. I appreciate you guys liking, sharing, subscribing. Hopefully this was helpful. Bring some clarity of like sometimes why you get these balancing forces. So much of it's because you've jumped to the next level of your consciousness, or in demonstration before your consciousness is caught up, and because there's that glaring dissonance between the demonstration and the consciousness, the inner world's going to eventually dominate the situation and govern the physical demonstration. And so that's what those balancing forces, putting things on pedestals. Hey, you can become more aware of that along your own bridges of incidence as you're embodying being blessed, which you are. You're blessed right here, right now. This is important though, that you feel it and you know it and you realize it. That's a whole nother thing. But through the bridges of incidence, through time, through taking new action or whatever, your consciousness, you don't have to do it. It's a cooperative thing between you and your creator. God develops the consciousness to be able to demonstrate without the resistance, without the need for the balancing forces to it's like, oh, you got $1,000, now it's gone. Without that balancing force coming in, being able to take that, have a surplus without feeling guilty about it or feeling unworthy or whatever, the limiting belief that triggered the balancing force to come in and take it from you. There's another example of that, spoken by Jesus, where it's like those that have. Let me pull that up for people that don't read the Bible or whatever. Those that have will be. And some people look at this as very triggered. This is the first response, but it's this is out of the New King James Version. This is the first thing on a Google search. For to everyone who has, more will be given, and he will have abundance. But from him who does not have, even what he has will be taken away. And you can see that glaringly in the world. The rich getting richer, the poor getting poorer. So much of that, you get... people it's like wanting to tax the rich or whatever, and blame the rich for the poor becoming poorer, even though it's a metaphysical reason. They are embodying scarcity, and because they're embodying that, they're living in the end of scarcity. More and more scarcity becomes your experience, because again, life is a demonstration of your faith, your beliefs, your assumptions, your relationship with God. All of that is being externalized in all these different forms and phases in the experiences of your life. And so to change the experiences of your life, you change your consciousness. And so for those that are in a scarcity thinking, scarcity consciousness, they demonstrate more and more of that, whereas those with an abundance consciousness and a wealth mindset demonstrate more and more wealth and abundance without those forces coming in to strip it away from them. Those forces, those balancing forces, will balance whether you're cursed or you're blessed. You are blessed. We get brainwashed by the matrix to believe we're cursed, and so we got to renew our mind, and that's a big part of what those balancing forces help us to do, is to renew our mind in a way that reflects the new identity, who you are in Christ, which is abundant, which is blessed, which is worthy, which is loved, which is all these things that we're trying to achieve. You are already. It's just that you just don't realize it. And so with that being said, thanks again for liking, sharing, subscribing on social networking things. Appreciate your spiritual support and your physical support. Thank you for that. Support link, donation link in the description. Thank you for that. I appreciate it. I appreciate the kind messages that some of you do when you do that. I read them. It's very heartfelt. Thank you. Love you. Appreciate it. Put it to good use. And with that being said, I think I'm balanced. So until the next now, God bless.